Welcome to the morning sports briefing on New Zealand Sport Radio.
Good morning to the morning sports briefing. Here we are on the 29th of August. Yes, it's Saturday. It's the weekend, folks. Welcome to the weekend. Hopefully you have got a great weekend lined up because there is plenty of sport going on. We'll have the A-League game final on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Right now, the first T20 between England and Pakistan is live. We'll have an update from there. Canterbury have defended the Ranfurly Shield, whilst the Brumbies saw off the force last night in the rugby. We had stunning comebacks by the Titans, and the Broncos got thrashed in the NRL. We have two golf championships going on, the BMW Championship in the PGA and the Walmart NW Arkansas Championship in the LPGA. We've got news from basketball, both over in the States and here in New Zealand, as well as updates on motorsport, winter sport, and tennis. Wow, there is so much going on, and this is your best way to start the day up to speed with all of the important sports news. In football, then, let's kick off with that, and just a reminder that the finals for the A-League on Sunday will be between Melbourne City and Sydney FC, the top two in the league. So that kicks off at 8:30 p.m. on Sunday. Over in the cricket, and yes, the first T20 between England and Pakistan has started. And quickly checking that out, currently England are 131 for 6 in their innings of 16.1 overs. Banton with 71 at the top of the order has led the way for England. He hit that 71 off 42 balls. And I'm going to hand you over to Stephen, who's going to take us through our birthdays this morning.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning to everybody tuning into New Zealand Sport Radio. Welcome to your weekend. In birthdays today, a former All White, a rugby union player who played number 8 for Counties Manukau and the Chiefs, now applying his trade in France, and finally a former New Zealand women's field hockey player, and that's where we start this morning. Samantha Harrison, born this day, the 29th of August, 1991. Here in New Zealand, is a field hockey player. She competed for New Zealand's Women's Nationals field hockey team, the Black Sticks Women, including for the team at the 2010 Commonwealth Games and the 2012 Summer Olympics. She actually joined her older sister, Charlotte, who had been in the team since 2000, and Whangarei, born in Whangarei, a hometown girl from up north. Moving right along, Fritz Lee is a Samoan rugby union player who currently plays for Claremont in the top 14. His regular playing position is at number 8. He previously played for the Chiefs in Super Rugby and Counties Manukau in the ITM Cup. Now, he captained Counties Manukau in 2013, led them to the playoffs, but he also led Counties Manukau to their first ever Ranfurly Shield Challenge win against Hawke's Bay in Napier. He was born in Samoa, but he moved to New Zealand when he was 15 years old. And finally, Shea Bunce, born this day, August the 29th, 1975 in Auckland, was a former New Zealand footballer and was a player coach for Waikato FC in the NZFC. He is a lawyer by trade, so he's done well after football. In April 2006, he signed for the New Zealand Knights, where he was the captain for the A-League team in the 2006-2007 season. That was formerly the well, obviously, they've gone on to become the Phoenix these days. Bunce also played for the New Zealand Under-23 team and made 29 appearances for the All Whites. There we go. He ended up scoring 2 goals during his career, and that's our birthdays today. I want to wish them all a very happy birthday. We'll be back shortly with league news.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And I actually used to be trained, had a hockey coach who was an ex-Black Stick. So I was wondering if it was going to be her that was her birthday, but no, it wasn't. Tina Bellcake, who was my hockey coach back in Hong Kong. So I keep waiting for you to for it to be her birthday, but there we go. It wasn't this week. Hope they all have a wonderful day, and hope they all enjoy their cake. Moving on then to the rugby news. in the Ranfurly Shield, Canterbury kicked off their first title defence of the season against North Otago. And it was a comfortable defence. Canterbury were leading 45-0 at half-time, and they finished 71-7 ahead there in that run out. So North Otago, the Heartland Championship champions from last season, getting their shot at the Ranfurly Shield, but coming up well short, unfortunately. That is the only defence that Canterbury will be making before the Mitre 10 Cup kicks off in a couple of weekends' time. Talking of the Mitre 10 Cup, and keep yourself, like our Facebook page and follow our Facebook page, because we will be publishing interviews with the head coaches of the Mitre 10 Cup sides. I've reached out to all 14 provinces to try and interview all of the head coaches to lead us up into the Mitre 10 Cup. The first one of those will be coming out, will be from Southland, which is already recorded, but say plenty of interviews for the Mitre 10 Cup coming up over the next couple of weeks as we build up towards the domestic competition here in New Zealand. Well, the second domestic competition, because Super Rugby Aotearoa was domestic as well, I guess. Talking of Super Rugby, and the Brumbies beat the Force 31-14. That secures the Brumbies a home final in Super Rugby AU. The question now is, who will they be facing, with the Rebels, the Force, and the Reds all fighting it out for those two places in the elimination final, or the semi-final game, to see who will face the Brumbies in the final. Today we have the second Super Rugby AU game of the weekend, which sees the Waratahs and the Rebels face off. This is a key game in deciding that finals place. The Reds already into that elimination final. I'm going to hand you back to Stephen now, who's going to take us through our NRL update, the sport that keeps on giving. And boy, it sounds like had at least one cracking game last night.
Yeah, definitely giving on the field at this time, Paul, because the Titans make a stunning comeback against the Dragons. The Roosters pile more misery on the Broncos. We preview the upcoming games today, and we look at the status of New Zealand Rugby League, but it's with the game last night in round 16 played at Nestra Jubilee Stadium, where the Titans made a stunning, or produced a stunning comeback to beat the Dragons by 14 points to 10, after the Dragons led by the lone penalty goal by Zach Lomax 2-0 at half-time, and it was the Dragons that were leading by 10 points to 4 with 8 minutes to go, courtesy of a Jacob Host try 6 minutes into the second half, converted by Zach Lomax, which gave them that lead. A good hit back by Philip Sami in the 50th minute saw the game go into those last 8 minutes with the Dragons seemingly in control, but it was a Tyrone Peachey try in the 75th minute that, with the conversion by Jamal Fogarty, that levelled the scores up at 10-all, and then only a minute or two later, it was Jamal Fogarty touching down for the winning try to give the Titans the victory by 14 points to 10, which is probably only maybe their, stand to be corrected, maybe their fifth win of the season against the Dragons, who will stay outside the top 8. Well, there was nothing close about our second game played at the SCG last night. It was the Roosters that were far too good for the Broncos, winning by 58 points to 12 after they led by 24 points to 6 at a half-time. So a comprehensive performance once again from the Roosters. We saw a brace of tries to Josh Morris, Daniel Tupou, and Satili Tupou Nuia. Who basically started the rot early in the first 4 minutes, scoring, and the rest of the tries coming from Nat Butcher, James Tedesco, Isaac Louis, and the other Morris, Brett Morris, scored in the 78th minute to push that score out to 58-12. The lone tries for the Broncos coming from David Fafita, Katoni Staggs, remembering they lost their coach this week, Anthony Seibold. So that final score again, the Broncos 12, the Roosters 58. painful year for if you're a Brisbane Broncos supporter. Coming up today from 5 p.m. today, we've got the Warriors taking on the Knights from Scully Park in Tamworth, remembering that was the first base for the Warriors. In our second game, we've got the second game from Nestra Jubilee Stadium, where the Sharks take on the Cowboys. And in our final game this evening, that game kicking off at 9:35 p.m, the Panthers taking on the West Tigers. Don't forget, this weekend we've also got the Betfred League Super League kicking off again this evening. And in our final news this morning, not so good news if you're a supporter of rugby league here in New Zealand. The Kiwis will not play tests in 2020 due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. New Zealand Rugby League had scheduled games against Australia and Tonga, but Chief Executive Greg Peters has confirmed that international travel restrictions have made that impossible. Peters says concerns over player welfare after a congested NRL season have also come into consideration with the proposed 2021 Rugby League World Cup in England on the horizon. Peters has taken a cautious approach over the demands on the NRL could put on players who have already spent long periods away from family this year. There's no point in a lead-up year to what is going on to be a massive year next year to play a test match. It's just not feasible to expect people to quarantine for 1 month in total for a 1 week campaign. It is costly and not realistic on the people themselves. New Zealand will likely play their next test in June before the World Cup in October and November. Peters says the NZRL will take a significant financial hit without an international program, but he hopes the New Zealand women may still take the field. And not good times for local rugby league, but to me, that's the right decision. Why quarantine for 2 weeks to basically prepare for a game in 1 week or one game only? If you had more games, I could understand that. That is very much it for league news this morning. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And yes, you've got to agree that actually one sport where they're not just talking about player welfare, but they are actually also following through with their actions. So good to see New Zealand Rugby League taking the right steps there. Totally agree. Moving on then to the golf. And in the golf, we have the BMW Championship. It's in its second round. It's happening now. Danny Lee is dropped down to tied 42nd in that at 4 over par. Danny Lee has had a couple of very good tournaments recently, but looks like he's struggling there in the BMW Championship, unfortunately. Over in the Walmart NW Arkansas Championship, that is in its second round. The second round is live now. Also live is the Walmart NW Arkansas Championship, which is in its first round. And Lydia Ko, after having a couple of decent weeks, decent tournaments recently, again, also struggling in this one. She finished on par, but that sees her down in tied at 61st. It's still early there with just in that first round. So we'll see how she manages to go from here. We'll bring an update on that tomorrow. Moving on then to the basketball and in the NBA. Yes, it is finals time, but it looks like we're going to have a third day of postponed games with protests over the social protests over the Black Lives Matter there and police brutality. We'll see if and when the NBA does resume. For supporters of the channel, I did have a talk about the changing face of sport over on nzsportsradio.com. So if you want to hear my opinions on the changing face of sport and which touches on this area, then do head over to there and become a supporter of the channel to see that video. The Schicht 3x3 Cup, which is again still basketball, it was due to take place between the 3rd and the 5th of September down in Chicago, with 10 men's and 10 women's teams taking part. That now has been postponed and moved to the 12th to the 14th of November. There will be 70 games over 3 days. And boy, that sounds like a festival of sport down there. It sounds a bit like a sevens tournament where you have smaller teams, shorter games, and it's just action-packed. So looking forward to that taking place, as I say, between the 12th and the 14th of November now down there in Invercargill. The over in motor racing and the Formula One Grand Prix is happening this weekend. We've had in second practice there, Verstappen is quickest with Red Bull Verstappen in the Red Bull car, and Ricciardo in the Renault was second in practice there. So yeah, interesting that it's not the Mercedes that have been dominant. Now maybe they have a different setup. We'll have to just wait and see when qualifying takes place over there. The second Grand Prix in Bahrain, which is part of the end of season run of races, will have a different and shorter track. So there'll be 2 races in Bahrain, one on the traditional track and then one on the outer track, which has not been used before. So that's going to be interesting to see how teams adapt to that second track.
You're listening to the morning sports briefing on New Zealand Sport Radio.
Moving on then to winter sports, and in the Winter Games NZ, Cosma won the overall edit in the final event, but this was only enough to come second overall. Team Wells topped the table, Cosma came second, and Smoothie came third. So head over to the Winter Games NZ to view those final edits. Some cracking skiing and snowboarding action over there. So check out that Facebook page. The tennis, the US Open starts on Monday, and Djokovic will face off against Dusmar in the men's. So Djokovic, number 1 men's 1 seed, and Pliskova, who is the women's number 1 seed, will take on Kalinina in the US Open. We'll keep you up to date with all of that. I say that starts on Monday. Don't forget that you can listen to New Zealand Sports Radio on the go. Just search for New Zealand Sports Radio on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite podcatcher. You have now started the day the best way, up to speed with all of the important sports news. Have a wonderful start to your weekend, everybody. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. with the morning sports briefing.